Welcome to the Jill on Money podcast. It is Saturday, June 19th or Juneteenth. I would like to remind everybody to use this opportunity to maybe do a little bit of exploration of what Juneteenth really means. Really instructive for those of us who maybe didn't grow up knowing about this and the significance of it. So do that. That would make you feel better. Today on the pod, we have a great guest today and tomorrow, actually. We have friend of the pod, Diane Swonk. She is the chief economist from Grant Thornton. Now, Diane is so helpful because she is going to conduct our economic boot camp this weekend. We're almost halfway through the year, so time to get going. We're going to start with the overall economy and discuss the labor market. And tomorrow we get to cover housing and inflation. So here's the first part of our interview with Diane Swonk. We're talking to you. It's almost half the year over. I cannot believe it.
I know.
And I think that the economy feels like it's kind of humming right now. So tell us big picture. Let's start with first, is the economy doing as well as it sort of feels for most of us out in the universe?
You know, it's truly spectacular. I mean, we're going to see growth, north of 7% in 2021. That's the strongest growth rate since 1984. And if you get a couple tenths more, could be the strongest within striking distance of 70 years. Stunning. After the worst year since the Great Depression, caveat. But, this is amazing. We got, we have our ability to maybe crawl ourselves out of this, and we need to.
Yeah. And when we talk about the economy humming like this, there has never been this period where the entire economy was shut down. I don't even know. Are there records from the great influenza from 1918?
A lot of people try to compare the roaring 20s to this, and that's really not a good comparison. There's a lot of other things going on. So we don't have a good benchmark. I mean, the closest thing is like coming home from war. And that's why, again, the strongest growth in nearly 70 years after, millions of soldiers returned back from home and we got things going again. But it took a little while to do that. And it really is stunning. I mean, this is, the idea that, we can get vaccinated and reopen. It's not as high as we'd like on the vaccination rates. And we're still worried about some regional rolling outbreaks with, the new Delta variant and things like that. A pandemic anywhere is a pandemic everywhere. We all should be humbled by that. So, you have a lot of humility over, all my decades as a forecaster. It's hubris does not serve you well. We are in uncharted waters, but right now it's, we've got some tailwind, and that's just something spectacular to embrace.
All right, let's go to the next big category when we talk to smarty pants economists like you, and that is the labor market, which is weird right now. Let's be clear. It is weird. So a couple of things that I want you to comment on. First of all, does it matter if weekly claims go up 1 week versus going down in a straight line? Does it really matter or not?
Well, it's a bit noisy, and it was interesting because these claims, 3 states alone more than accounted for all the increase. It wasn't broad-based, increases across the country saying, oh my God, we're all laying off workers again. You had Pennsylvania, California, and Kentucky in that order. And Pennsylvania alone was about 60% of the increase alone. And so you wonder if something, sometimes you get these bumps from one state or a couple states in a week. And so it's not the best of news. I'd like to have seen it decline, and you're still running about double what you were pre-pandemic. And you'd like to see those sliding right in, but they've become a pretty noisy statistic, and it's weekly, and they get revised a lot.
Right. So we don't know. Okay. Now let's go to the bigger one, the monthly claims. Now, for the last 2 months, we've had hundreds of thousands of jobs that were created. And that seemed to disappoint many people. Should we be disappointed by that level of job creation?
Well, given, we are 6.7 million or 7.6 million, there's my dyslexia in there, my dyslexia, 7.6 million in the hole still from February 2020. Yeah, we should be disappointed in that, what happened was this pandemic, wasn't a V. I mean, everyone's telling me it's a V now. And I'm like, do you know when it started? It was way back in, February 2020 was the peak of the last expansion. And we had some really horrible months. And then we came back really quickly because in May and June a year ago, all those workers that were laid off, that got called back, they were still attached to their employers. And so it was easy for them to come back. So we got millions of jobs back in a month. And, we were really hoping there wouldn't be a speed limit on what we could get in terms of employment gains. As we regained momentum, we almost lost it again. Remember, December went negative.
Yes.
We almost went double dip there for a bit, which Europe did do. And so, the good news is we're gaining. The disappointment is we're still so many in the hole, and we would have liked to have seen it a faster recouping of the jobs lost. And it's just harder when there's people that are no longer attached to their previous employer. People have, it's sort of a myth that everyone's moved out of cities. What actually has happened is, the low mortgage rates accelerated millennials who wanted to buy houses outside of cities. But what we lost during the pandemic was the in-migration that we usually see from young people coming to go to school in the cities, foreign students coming to go to school in the cities. Those were a major drag in terms of absorbing space in our cities, major urban areas over the last year. And, it's really important because, people aren't in the same places as the jobs are. Mobility is a problem. You've got a lot of people out in rural areas now that can't get to the jobs. It costs a lot more. You want to go buy a used car right now? Pretty expensive. The insurance on it also gone up a lot over the last year. And then you got to fill it with gas. And so then you add, a couple other layers onto all this issue of, we still got childcare, until the schools are fully open in the fall, you're not going to have a lot of the women that dropped out be able to come back. These were lowest wage women that dropped out because they just couldn't have their kids online at the same time that they are dealing with this. But also, I think it's important to sort of look at, we have this fear. We're paying hazard pay to frontline workers that are putting their lives in their own hands, asking people to mask up. And that's a difficult issue. This is a very different, we saw a record number of baby boomers over the age of 65 with a high school degree or less. Looks like they retired out entirely, left. Because they didn't want to do these frontline jobs anymore. And, they got to pay hazard pay. They got to pay up now. And it's hard. And the large companies can pay up pretty easily. It's really hard for those smaller businesses to compete. And then, there is this debate on how much are unemployment insurance benefits a deterrent.
Right. So let's talk about that for a second. Yeah. There is this factor, which is going to end in 90 days, which is the federal enhanced benefits of $300 a week. And it did what it was supposed to do, keep people home and safe. And I don't know why people think that should be a finger wagging moment. Like, how dare you make the smart economic decision? That is going to end.
Yeah, you're right. 25 states in the next, right now as we speak, and over the next couple of weeks, we'll remove it.
Do you think that a good chunk of those people will come back into the labor force pretty quickly?
Some part of them will. And the question is, how will employers cast their net to lure workers who have gotten sort of, those workers that did sort of retire out early or retired out in their 60s, over 65, where the big surge was, and those baby boomers with a high school degree or less. My guess is that they can be lured back, but they got to feel safe, or they got to be compensated for the risks they're taking.
Right.
And, I think, what's interesting about this, and I hear other, I remember Steve Jobs being quoted once about Silicon Valley, that they had this, agreement, non-compete clauses, we don't take my workers. They're our workers. Well, actually, the workers, that means they don't have any bargaining power. And this is the first time, and I can't, since the late 1990s, that workers have had any say. Hallelujah. I mean, that they actually have a little wiggle room to say, not so quick. And so, this is really important, is that consumers are spending really rapidly, and they all want to get out and have an experience and be able to experience each other, hug each other. And on the flip side of it, businesses are trying to ramp up, and they're doing it all faster than workers are able to get matched up to them. And so there's friction there. I call it heat on reentry. There's friction.
When we hear this term labor shortage, is it real or not? Like, how am I supposed to take that term in? If you go and Google search, by the way, it's a massively searched upon term. So what do you think?
Well, labor shortage, if you actually look at things like leisure and hospitality, and we say we've got record job openings right now. Well, yes, we do. But leisure and hospitality, they got about 1.6 million or so, 1.5 million job openings right now. Yet we lost 2.6 million jobs. Clearly, we're missing something.
Yeah.
In professional services, and I've had to deal with this since my own firm, we are listing about 1.5 million as well job listings. And we only lost 700,000 jobs since February. And accountants not only have seen their jobs come back and recoup what they lost to the crisis, but accountants are soaring. The trend has just broken all previous trends, and they're hiring accountants up like crazy. And that's great for them. But remember, this is all at the same time that a lot of kids that were graduating, they deferred or delayed their graduation because of the move to online. They also couldn't get their CPA licenses because licensing got delayed and deferred because of the move to online and not in-person testing. And so you've got all these things that you kind of look, and there's cogs in the wheel in terms of getting workers matched to employers. There are some labor shortages in sawmills right now. There's actually a labor shortage there. We're using a lot of lumber, and there's labor shortages. And, manufacturing in general was still down 500,000 jobs from the peak in February 2020, and that was still down quite a bit because of the trade wars we had before that. So you sort of have a hard time believing that all those workers retired and all of those workers are unskilled now. And what we've learned, and what Jay Powell really made a point of, is that, build it and they will come. If you give enough, they will come. And in fact, talking to the online job sites, and what they're seeing is those large employers that can afford to give more, and they're giving more benefits, and they're even pet insurance, sign of the times. And everyone adopted a pet during the pandemic, along with healthcare insurance, and some with childcare. That's really amazing. And it turns out last time I remember that happening, and bonuses at, fast food restaurants was 1990s, late 1999, 1998. And we did have that happen back then. I don't remember pet insurance. That's a new one. But I think it's really important to understand that, those employers are getting lots of applications, and it is really hard for the other employers to compete.
Do you think it is brutalist of me to say the following? I'm sorry, small restaurant owner, but your crappy job at $9 an hour, no one wants. And maybe that job and maybe your business cannot exist in this current environment. Is that brutalist?
It's a little brutal because, I think one of the points we have to also understand is, as we consolidate more employment at large firms, yes, those workers are getting paid now, but that's why we think of it as more of a step function instead of a ongoing wage increases going forward, because those workers now working for larger firms are going to have even less of a say.
So like today, so interesting. So today, Schlesinger, you may be right, but if with all this consolidation, if there's only, let's say, 10 big employers, and we don't seem to be moving towards a unionization in many, in these industries, then we could be falling back a few years from now. So it's may not be interesting. Very interesting.
And, you lose dynamism as well. You also snuff out a lot of, newer companies and their ability to build up as well. And we know some of the big guys play pretty hard. And that's, that's something you really need, that innovation and the dynamism in the U.S. economy. And, I think that's something that is really important. And that's, I worry about that going forward.
So you're basically going to wave your magic wand. Employment will be fixed by when?
At the current pace, we're about, we think there's a bit of a speed limit right now, which Jay Powell talked about as well, in terms of employment coming back. And we'll probably get 1 million a month, before the end of the year. That's good. But it looks like it'll be a little lower than that. And that means we're talking about well into 2022 until we recoup what we lost. And, with the retirements out there, we'll be looking at a full employment scenario where you start seeing the unemployment rate between Black workers and people of color and white workers narrowing, the things you want to see in a more healthy, inclusive recovery. We didn't see until after 10 years of the last expansion, but we could see that as soon as the latter part of 2022.
Okay, Diane's coming back tomorrow. One more episode. If you have a question about the economy or anything going on in your personal financial life, send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. If you're on the website JillOnMoney.com, just hit the contact button, and there you can listen to past shows, or maybe if you want, you can check out some other content that we have. You can read what I write. You can watch some TV segments. Check out the resource section. While you're there, sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Don't forget to lift somebody up today, and please try to go through your Saturday with a little grit, with growth, and with also a bit of grace. We'll talk to you tomorrow.